Paper lanterns floated up from the hands of children on New Adelaide. The colony's harvest festival had drawn thousands to the open fields, families laughing under twin suns that painted everything gold. Little Myra released her lantern and watched it rise, carrying her wish for a puppy into the warm afternoon sky. Then the shadows came. They fell across the fields like a sudden eclipse. People looked up. The lanterns seemed to freeze in the air as something vast blotted out the suns. Ships. Thousands of ships, each 1 kilometer long, descending through the clouds like metal gods arriving for judgment. The Dravani had come. No warning, no demands, no chance to surrender. The first energy blast struck the capital city and turned 3 million lives into light and ash. The second hit the spaceport. The third found the festival grounds. Myra never got her puppy. Across the colony, a young pilot named Sana Reyes was running. She had been visiting her mother's grave when the attack started, and now she sprinted through burning streets toward the emergency hangars. Bodies lay everywhere. Buildings collapsed around her. The air itself seemed to scream. She found a damaged shuttle, climbed inside, and launched without clearance or care. As she broke through the atmosphere, she looked back through tears and smoke. New Adelaide, her home for 26 years, was becoming a wound of fire on the planet's surface. 2 other colonies died that same hour. 8 million humans gone before anyone could even ask why. 3 days later, Admiral Rena Dubois stood in the command center of the Perseverance, humanity's finest warship, and watched her fleet burn. The Dravani vessels outclassed everything humanity had built. Their weapons punched through shields like paper. Their armor laughed at human missiles. "We've lost 40% of the fleet," her officer reported. "They're not slowing down." Dubois was 53 years old. She had spent 30 years preparing for a war she hoped would never come. Now it was here and she was losing. "Pull back to Earth," she ordered. "All ships, we make our stand at home." On Earth, panic had already taken hold. News feeds showed the burning colonies on endless repeat. Politicians shouted at each other while citizens fought for spots on evacuation ships. The Dravani fleet was 4 days away. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone except Dr. Amira Okonkwo. She sat, alone in the basement archives of Ironwood Industries, surrounded by dusty files and forgotten history. The company had been a mining operation for 200 years now, but before that they had built ships, very special ships. Amira had noticed something strange in the attack footage. The energy signatures from Dravani weapons matched classified files from 3 centuries ago. Files that should not exist. Files that described ships built right here in human factories above Neptune. She made a call to a number she had not used in years. "Uncle Yusuf," she said when the old man answered. "I need to see you. It's about the archives." "Amira," his voice sounded tired and afraid. "I wondered when someone would figure it out." "Figure what out?" Silence, then, "Those ships attacking us, we built them, my grandmother's company, 300 years ago." Amira felt her world tilt. "That's impossible." "I have the records, I have the codes." He paused. "I have everything, Amira, including a way to stop them." 4 days. Earth had 4 days before extinction arrived in ships that humans had built with their own hands, sold to strangers and forgotten. The Dravani broadcast only one message during their advance. High Commander Draven, leader of their holy fleet, appeared on every screen across human space. He was tall, gray-skinned, with eyes like burning coals. "The gods have declared your extinction," he announced. "Your kind is a disease, we are merely their instruments. The sacred vessels will cleanse you from existence. This is divine will. This is mercy." The transmission ended. The fleet kept coming. In her shuttle drifting with a convoy of refugees, Sana watched the message replay. Sacred vessels. Divine will. She thought about her mother's grave, now buried under radioactive glass. She thought about little Myra and her paper lantern. She thought about revenge. On Mars, Amira arrived at her uncle's estate. Yusuf Ironwood was 87 years old. the last living person who knew the full truth about what his ancestors had done. They came to us through middlemen, he explained, showing her ancient files. The Kellen Consortium needed warships. We needed resources. Nobody asked who the ships were really for. And the codes. Yusuf pulled up a file-marked founder's lock. Every ship we built had a kill switch, buried so deep no one could find it without knowing exactly where to look. My grandmother kept the codes as insurance. He looked at Amira with hollow eyes. She never destroyed them. She said, "What if they come back?" Amira stared at the screen. The codes to disable an entire enemy fleet. The power to end this war in seconds. Why haven't you used them? Because I'm a coward. Yusuf's hands shook. And because using them will kill millions. Their life support will fail. Everyone aboard will die. Outside, the stars were cold and quiet. Somewhere out there, 2,000 Dravani warships flew toward Earth, crewed by warriors who believed they rode divine chariots. They had no idea their gods were engineers from Neptune. And Amira now held the key to their extinction in her hands. 300 years ago, a woman named Priya Ironwood made a deal that would shape the galaxy. She was 34 years old, brilliant and desperate. Earth's first colonies were dying, resources were scarce. Hope was running out. Then the Kellen Consortium arrived, alien merchants who traveled between stars, buying and selling whatever the galaxy needed. They needed warships. "We have clients who require vessels," the Kellen representative had said, its translator turning clicks into words. "Your species has a talent for building things that last. We will provide designs. You will build. We will pay in materials your colonies need to survive." Priya did not ask who the clients were. She did not ask why they needed warships. She saw her people starving on dying worlds, and she saw a chance to save them. "Show me the designs," she said. The Neptune orbital yards became humanity's greatest secret. Thousands of workers built ships in the cold darkness above the ice giant. The Kellen designs were advanced, but human engineers improved them. They made the engines more efficient. They reinforced the armor. They added systems the Kellen had never imagined. And buried deep in every ship's core, Priya installed a founder's lock. "Insurance," she told her daughter years later. "If these ships ever come back to hurt us, we can turn them off." The Kellen paid well. Earth's colonies flourished. The ships vanished into the galaxy and humanity moved on. The Kellen Consortium collapsed decades later, and with it, all records of who had bought those vessels. Priya never destroyed the codes, neither did her children. Now in the present day, Amira Okonkwo understood why. She knew, Amira said, sitting across from Yusuf in his dusty study. She always knew they might come back. She hoped they wouldn't. Yusuf poured himself water with shaking hands. But she prepared anyway. That's what our family does. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. On Earth, the worst was already happening. Admiral Dubois had pulled her remaining fleet to home space, 200 battered ships against 2,000 enemy vessels. The moon had been evacuated. Underground shelters filled with terrified civilians. Generation ships launched toward distant colonies, carrying humanity's last hope in case Earth fell. "How long until decryption is complete?" Dubois demanded through the comm link. Amira checked her screens. "Another 40 hours. The codes are buried under centuries of encryption. We have 36 hours until they reach Earth. Then I need to work faster." Meanwhile, across the void, High Commander Draven prepared his soul for holy war. He knelt in the chapel at the heart of his flagship, the Divine Reckoning. The engine core pulsed behind him, casting blue light across icons of the gods, beings of pure radiance who had descended from the heavens and gifted his people these magnificent vessels. "Grant us strength," Draven prayed. "Grant us purpose. Let our sacred vessels carry your judgment to the unbelievers." The Dravani had built their entire civilization around these ships. For 300 years, their priests had maintained the vessels according to ancient texts, sacred instructions passed down through generations. They did not understand the technology. They did not need to. Faith was enough. Every young Dravani dreamed of serving aboard a sacred vessel. It was the highest honor their society offered. Warriors trained from childhood for the privilege. To die aboard such a ship meant eternal glory. Draven had spent 40 years earning his place as High Commander. He believed with every fiber of his being that he was doing holy work. The humans were demons. The prophecies said so. Their destruction would purify the galaxy and bring the gods' final blessing upon the Dravani people. He finished his prayers and returned to the command deck. Status report. The human fleet has retreated to their homeworld, his officer reported. Their ships are inferior, their tactics are desperate, victory is assured within 2 days. Draven nodded. This was as the gods intended. In the refugee convoy, Sana volunteered for a mission everyone knew was suicide. A small group of pilots would attack a Dravani supply convoy, buying time for evacuations. They had outdated fighters and improvised weapons. They had no real chance of survival. Sana did not care. She had watched her world burn. She wanted to hurt them even just a little before the end. The attack failed in 30 minutes. Her fighter was disabled, not destroyed. She was captured, dragged aboard a Dravani vessel, and thrown into a holding cell. Her guards looked at her like she was an insect, disgusting, meaningless, something to step on. But as they led her through the ship, Sana noticed something strange. The warriors touched the walls with reverence like pilgrims at a holy site. They whispered prayers when passing certain doors. They treated the ship itself as sacred. And behind some of the painted panels, she caught glimpses of writing that looked almost familiar. Amira worked without sleep, racing the decryption process. Her eyes burned, her hands cramped. The fate of humanity sat in corrupted files from 3 centuries ago. At 32 hours to contact, she broke through. The Founder's lock codes appeared on her screen. Every ship, every weapon, every system. She could disable them all with a single command. But she also found something else in the archives. Personal notes from the original engineers, people who had built these ships with their own hands. One note caught her eye. I hope whoever ends up with these ships deserves them. I hope we haven't just armed monsters. Amira stared at the words. Then she called Admiral Dubois. I have the codes, she said. I can end this war right now. Then do it. If I use them at full power, everyone aboard those ships dies. Millions of people. Silence on the line. Then Dubois spoke, her voice heavy. They killed 8 million of ours without blinking. I know, Amira looked at the codes, but that doesn't mean we have to become them. 10,000 Dravani warriors knelt before the engine core of the divine reckoning, their voices rising in ancient harmony. The morning prayer had been performed every day for 300 years, passed down through generations like a sacred inheritance. The blue light of the core washed over their gray skin as they chanted words they believed came from the gods themselves. High Commander Draven led the prayer from the front, his voice strongest among thousands. This was his favorite moment of each day, the unity, the purpose, the absolute certainty that they were doing divine work. The prayer ended. The warriors rose. Another day of holy war began. Draven walked the corridors of his flagship with the pride of a man who had earned his place through faith and blood. Every surface gleamed. Every system hummed with perfect efficiency. The ship was 300 years old, yet it functioned better than anything the Dravani could build themselves. Because they had never needed to build anything, the gods had provided. The sacred texts described how, in ancient times, beings of pure light descended upon the Dravani homeworld. They gifted the chosen people with vessels of war, magnificent ships that would carry them across the stars to claim their destiny. The beings left instructions for maintaining these divine machines, then ascended back to the heavens. Ever since, the Dravani had followed those instructions with religious devotion. Their priests were actually engineers, though they did not think of themselves that way. They performed maintenance rituals, spoke prayers while replacing components, and blessed coolant fluid before adding it to engines. They did not understand the technology. Understanding was not required, only faith. In her cell aboard a lesser vessel, Sana Reyes had begun to understand something the Dravani could not. She had been watching her guards for hours, the way they moved through the ship, the way they touched walls and whispered thanks, the way they genuflected when passing certain doors marked with holy symbols. And she had noticed the writing behind the panels. When her guards looked away, she scratched at the painted metal near her bed. The Dravani script came away in flakes, revealing older markings underneath, letters she recognized instantly. English, standard human labeling, emergency instructions, part numbers, safety warnings, all hidden beneath centuries of religious paint. Sana laughed. She could not help it. Her guards thought she had gone mad from fear. "Your holy ship," she said to them, still laughing. "Your divine gift from the gods. My people built it 300 years ago in factories above Neptune." The guards stared at her. One raised his weapon. "The demon lies," he snarled. "She tries to blaspheme against the sacred vessels. Check the walls yourself, scratch the paint. See what's underneath." They did not check, they did not dare. Such an act would be heresy. But word of the crazy human's claims began to spread through the ship. On Earth, the final hours ticked away. Admiral Dubois stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, watching her tactical display fill with enemy signatures. 2,000 Dravani warships were forming up for the final assault. Her 200 vessels were arranged in defensive formations, ready to die protecting the planet behind them. She had sent her family to the underground shelters. She had recorded goodbye messages. She had made peace with what was coming. Then Amira's call came through. "I have a solution," Amira said, "but you need to understand the options." "Talk fast, they're almost in weapons range." "The Founder's lock has settings. Full shutdown kills everyone aboard, life support fails. But I can set it to disable weapons only. Their ships keep flying, life support stays on, but they can't shoot. They'll still have millions of soldiers. They can board us, invade Earth. But they can't bomb it from orbit. And here's the thing, Admiral. If we disable their weapons without killing them, we have leverage. We can negotiate. We can end this without genocide." Dubois closed her eyes. 8 million humans were dead because of these aliens. Every instinct screamed for revenge, for complete destruction, for making them pay. But she was a soldier, not a murderer. "Do it," she said. "Weapons only." Amira's hands moved across the console. 3 centuries of secrets, one keystroke. She hesitated. Yusuf stood beside her, watching. Second thoughts. "I'm about to cripple an entire civilization's reason for existing. Their ships are their religion. When their weapons fail, their faith will shatter." Amira looked at her uncle. "We're not just disabling machines, we're killing gods. Gods that were going to kill us." "I know," she pressed the key. "That doesn't make it easier." The signal traveled at the speed of light, bouncing through ancient relay systems that the Dravani had maintained without understanding. It reached the divine reckoning first, then spread to every vessel in the fleet. Deep inside each ship's core, a tiny program woke up after 300 years of sleep. It checked the signal. It verified the codes. Then it did exactly what Priya Ironwood had designed it to do. On the divine reckoning, the sacred, instruments began to scream. Draven rushed to the command deck. "Report what's happening." "Commander, our weapons are offline. All of them. Every ship in the fleet reports the same failure." "Impossible. Run diagnostics. Perform the sacred maintenance rituals." "We've tried, Commander. The systems won't respond, and something else." The officer's voice trembled. "The holy voice is speaking." The ship's computer, worshipped for centuries as an oracle of the gods, was broadcasting in a language the Dravani had never heard. A language that sounded like the demon prisoners spoke. English, the ship was speaking English. It was requesting identification codes it had not asked for in 300 years. Draven felt his faith crack like ice under pressure. He turned to his priests, his engineers, his holy men who maintained divine machines they did not understand. "Find out what's happening," he ordered. "Open the sacred panels, look inside the core, I need answers." "Commander, such actions are heresy." "Do it." They opened the panels. They looked where no Dravani had ever looked before. They found a metal plaque bolted to the engine housing, engraved with words in the demon language. One of the officers had studied human writing for intelligence purposes. He translated slowly, his voice breaking. "Ironwood Industries, Neptune Orbital Yards, human-built, human-tested." Draven stared at the plaque. 300 years of faith crumbled in his chest. The gods had never existed. The sacred vessels were human machines, and now the humans had turned them off. Silence spread through the Dravani fleet like a disease. 2,000 ships drifted in formation, their weapons dead, their crews paralyzed by confusion and fear. For 300 years, these vessels had been invincible, gifts from the gods, instruments of divine will. Now they floated helpless in the void, unable to fire a single shot. On the divine reckoning, High Commander Draven sat alone in his private quarters. The plaque lay on his desk. Human-built, human-tested. He had read those words 100 times in the past hour, and each time they cut deeper. His entire life had been a lie. Every prayer, every battle, every warrior he had sent to die in the name of gods who never existed. A knock at his door. His aide entered, nervous. "Commander, the fleet is awaiting orders." Draven did not look up. "What orders can I give? Our weapons are useless. Our faith is broken. The demons we came to destroy are the same people who built our holiest treasures. Perhaps we could ram their ships." "To what end? They can simply disable our engines next. They let us keep life support running. They could have killed us all and chose not to." Draven finally raised his eyes. Why would they show such mercy? He had no answer, neither did his aide. "Bring me the human prisoner," Draven said. "The one who laughed at our sacred walls. Perhaps she can explain her people to me." On Earth, the War Council was in chaos. Presidents shouted at each other. Generals demanded immediate strikes while the enemy was vulnerable. Civilians flooded the streets, celebrating what they thought was victory. Amira sat quietly in the corner of the council chamber, her laptop still connected to the Founder's lock system. She had more power in that device than anyone else in the room, and the weight of it pressed on her shoulders like a physical burden. "We should destroy them now," one general insisted. "Finish what they started, full shutdown, kill their life support, end this forever." "That's genocide," Amira said softly. "They killed 8 million of our people. And killing 8 million of theirs will not bring ours back." Amira stood facing the council. "I hold the codes. I made the choice to disable weapons only. I did not consult you because there was no time, but I'm telling you now I will not use the full shutdown, not today, not ever." "You don't have the authority." "I have the only authority that matters. The codes are mine. My family kept them for 300 years, and I'm telling you that we are better than mass murder." Admiral Dubois spoke from the video screen. "She's right. We have them helpless. We don't need to kill them. We need to talk to them." "Talk? They incinerated our colonies. And now they can't incinerate anything. They're stuck in space with no weapons, surrounded by our fleet, and their entire belief system just collapsed. They're not conquerors anymore. They're survivors." Dubois paused. "Just like us." The council argued for another hour. In the end, they agreed to attempt contact with the Dravani fleet, not out of mercy exactly, but out of practicality. A crippled enemy fleet could still cause problems, boarding actions, suicide runs, long-term guerrilla warfare. Better to negotiate from strength than to create. Desperate enemies. Amira sent the message herself. "Dravani fleet. This is Dr. Amira Okonkwo of Earth. Your weapons have been disabled by technology built into your ships 3 centuries ago. We have no desire for further bloodshed. We are willing to discuss terms. Please respond. The response came faster than anyone expected. On the view screen, High Commander Draven appeared. He looked older than his broadcast from days before. The fire in his eyes had become something else, not defeat exactly, but a profound and terrible confusion. Dr. Okonkwo, I have questions. So do I. Your people built our sacred vessels. This is truth. Yes, 300 years ago, a company called Ironwood Industries. The contracts were handled through middlemen. We didn't know who the ships were for until now. Draven was silent for a long moment. Our entire civilization worships these ships. Our religion, our government, our sense of purpose, all built on the belief that gods gave us these vessels to claim the stars. I understand. No, you cannot understand. You cannot know what it means to learn that everything you believed was a lie, that the holy machine you have served your entire life was built by the enemy you were trying to destroy. Amira thought of her uncle, carrying 3 centuries of family secrets. She thought of Priya Ironwood, making desperate deals to save her people. She thought of all the consequences of choices made by people long dead. You're right, she said. I don't understand what you're feeling, but I know something about living with the weight of what our ancestors did. They built your ships. They gave you the means to cross the stars. They also gave us the means to stop you. Why didn't you use it completely? You could have killed us all. Because we're not trying to destroy you. We're trying to survive. There's a difference. Draven stared at her through the screen. Behind him, Amira could see Dravani officers watching, listening, their gray faces marked with the same terrible confusion as their commander. What do you want from us? Draven asked. Right now, I want you to hold position. Don't make any aggressive moves. In return, we'll provide supplies. Your fleet wasn't expecting to be stuck out here, and you'll need food and water eventually. You would feed your enemies. We would feed people who might become something other than enemies. Amira leaned forward. Commander Draven, your war is over. You can't fight us. But that doesn't mean everyone has to die. We built those ships to last. Maybe we can build something else that lasts too. The transmission ended. The council chamber buzzed with nervous discussion. Admiral Dubois appeared on Amira's private channel. That was either brilliant or insane, the admiral said. Probably both. Amira looked at her laptop at the codes that could still kill millions with a keystroke. I just hope it was enough. In his cell of a quarters, Draven sat in darkness, waiting for the human prisoner to arrive. He had one question for her. One question that would determine everything that came next. If the humans had built their ships to be so magnificent, so lasting, so perfect, why had they never come to claim them? Why give gifts to strangers and never ask for anything in return? Sana Reyes had expected to die aboard this ship. She had made peace with it, even welcomed it. Death meant joining her mother, her neighbors, everyone she had lost when New Adelaide burned. Instead, they brought her to the High Commander himself. The guards removed her chains but stayed close, weapons ready. Draven sat behind a simple desk, the metal plaque from the engine core resting in front of him. He looked nothing like the fire-eyed zealot from the broadcasts. He looked like a man whose entire world had crumbled. Sit, he said. Sana sat. Are you going to kill me? I considered it, my officers advised it, but I find myself wanting answers more than I want your blood. Draven pushed the plaque toward her. Tell me about this. Sana looked at the familiar lettering. Human-built, human-tested, such simple words carrying the weight of 3 centuries. 300 years ago, humanity was young in space. Our colonies were failing. We were desperate for resources. Then alien merchants showed up, the Kellen Consortium, and offered us a deal. They had clients who needed warships. We had engineers who could build them. The Kellen, we have records of them. They brought us the sacred vessels as gifts from the gods. They weren't gifts, they were purchases. The Kellen were middlemen. They bought ships from us, sold them to you, and told you whatever story would make the sale work. Draven's jaw tightened. So our entire religion is based on a merchant's lie. Your religion is based on how your people chose to interpret what they received. The lie came from the Kellen. The meaning came from you. This seemed to strike something in Draven. He was quiet for a long moment. Why did your people build ships so well? Our engineers, our priests, have maintained these vessels for 300 years, but we could never improve them. We could never even understand them fully. Yet they never failed us. They carried us across the stars, generation after generation. Sana thought about the question. Because that's what we do. We build things that last. Tools, ships, bridges. We put pieces of ourselves into everything we make. My great-grandmother built furniture that her grandchildren still use. An engineer named Priya Ironwood built ships that crossed the galaxy. She shrugged. We don't know how to build things any other way. And the kill switch, the codes that disabled our weapons. Insurance, she hoped you would never need to be stopped, but she prepared anyway, just in case. Sana met Draven's eyes. That's also what we do, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Draven stood and walked to his window. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass. Somewhere out there was Earth, the homeworld of the species he had come to destroy, the birthplace of the ships he had worshipped. I have killed millions in the name of faith, he said quietly. I burned your colonies because I believed your kind was evil. I believed I was doing holy work. And now I don't know what I believe. My ships came from your factories. My weapons were built by your hands. The demons I sought to cleanse from the galaxy are the same people who gave my civilization the means to reach the stars. He turned back to her. What does that make me? Sana could have said many things. Monster, murderer, fool, all of them were true, but looking at him now, she saw something else. A man confronting the ruins of everything he had built his life upon. It makes you someone who has to choose what comes next, she said. You can't undo what you've done, neither can we, but you can decide what you do with the truth now that you have it. Before Draven could respond, alarms began to sound. His communications officer burst through the door. Commander, the human fleet is moving. There, the officer stopped, staring at Sana. Why is the prisoner here? She's helping me understand something. Draven turned to his console. Show me what's happening. The display lit up with tactical data. Human ships were moving, but not in attack formation. They were spreading out, surrounding the Dravani fleet and deploying cargo pods. A message came through. Dr. Amira Okonkwo's face appeared on screen. Commander Draven, we promised supplies. Our ships are delivering food, water, and medical equipment to your fleet. Please instruct your vessels not to interfere with the transfer. Draven stared at the screen. You're feeding us. You're stuck in space with disabled weapons. You'll run out of supplies eventually. We'd rather negotiate with living people than watch you starve. Why would you help us? We killed your people. We destroyed your worlds. Amira's expression was complicated, pain and determination, and something that might have been hope. Because showing you mercy doesn't mean we've forgiven you. It means we're choosing who we want to be. And we don't want to be the kind of people who let millions die when we could save them. The transmission ended. Around Draven, his officers stood in stunned silence. Sana watched their faces. Confusion, shame, the first fragile stirrings of something new. They could have killed us, one officer whispered. They still could, instead they're sending food. Draven looked at the human cargo pods drifting toward his helpless fleet. 3 centuries ago, humans had built ships that carried his people to the stars. Now they were building something else, a bridge across the gulf of war and hatred. He made his decision. Signal all vessels, he ordered. Stand down completely, accept the human supplies, and prepare for diplomatic communication. He turned to Sana. Will you help us talk to your people? They might trust a human messenger more than a Dravani commander. Sana thought about New Adelaide, about her mother's grave, now radioactive glass, about all the reasons she should want these people dead. Then she thought about little Myra and her paper lantern, carrying a wish into the sky. Yes, she said, I'll help. 6 months after the war ended without a final battle, A new station floated in the space between Earth and what had been the front line. They called it Halfway Point. Human engineers and Dravani workers had built it together, the first thing their species had created as partners rather than enemies. It was small and imperfect, but it stood as proof that something other than war was possible. Inside the main conference room, diplomats from both sides sat across from each other. The treaty negotiations had been long and painful. Reparations, borders, the fate of occupied territories, the future of refugees who had lost everything. Nothing could bring back the 8 million humans who died in the initial attacks. Nothing could erase the centuries of Dravani religious war, the countless species they had conquered in the name of false gods. But the people in this room were trying to build something that might prevent such horrors from happening again. Amira Okonkwo represented the Ironwood legacy. She had become the public face of humanity's strange connection to the Dravani fleet, the woman whose ancestors had built the ships and whose courage had kept those ships from becoming tombs. Across from her sat Draven. He was no longer High Commander. The Dravani government had stripped his rank after he surrendered the fleet, but the reformers who rose in the chaos of their collapsing theocracy had recognized his value. He understood what the old ways had cost. He was willing to speak the truth, even when it hurt. The final terms, the human negotiator announced. Border restoration to pre-war lines, joint patrols to prevent future conflicts, exchange of historical records regarding Ironwood Industries and the original ship contracts, and a commitment from both sides to establish diplomatic channels before any future disputes. Both delegations signed. It was done. Amira found Draven afterward, standing at a window overlooking the stars. "Your people hate you for surrendering," she said. "Some of them, others are beginning to understand." Draven watched a joint human Dravani patrol ship drift past the station. The young ones especially, they grew up worshipping ships they couldn't build, following texts they couldn't understand. Now they know the truth, and some of them are asking what we can build for ourselves. That's progress. It's terrifying. Everything I knew was wrong. Everything I taught others was a lie. He turned to her. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps we needed to learn that the universe is stranger and more complicated than our simple faiths allowed. On the surface of a burnt world, Sana Ray's knelt in ash. New Adelaide was dead. Nothing grew here anymore. Radiation had poisoned the soil, and it would be centuries before the planet recovered. But Sana had brought something with her, a small case containing seeds from Earth, engineered to survive harsh conditions. She dug a hole in the gray earth, planted the seeds, and covered them gently. Would they grow? She didn't know. Probably not. The soil was too damaged, the radiation too strong. She planted them anyway. That was the human way, she had learned. You didn't stop trying just because success was unlikely. You planted seeds in burned ground. You built bridges to enemies. You hoped for the best and prepared for the worst. She stood brushing ash from her hands and looked up at the empty sky. Somewhere up there, the fleet that had destroyed her home was learning to live with the truth about their sacred vessels. Somewhere up there, two species were awkwardly, painfully, slowly learning to coexist. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever. But it was a start. On Mars, Yusuf Ironwood died peacefully in his sleep, 3 months after the treaty was signed. His will was simple. His estate went to various charities. His personal effects were to be donated to the Ironwood archives. But for Amira, he left a single item, the data chip containing the founder's lock codes. With it was a handwritten note. "Destroy them. We don't need kill switches anymore. Build trust instead." Amira held the chip for a long time, thinking about what it represented. 3 centuries of secrets, the power to disable an entire fleet, a weapon that had saved humanity and shattered a civilization. She walked to the archive's incinerator, opened the door, and threw the chip inside. Priya Ironwood had kept the codes as insurance, hoping they would never be needed. Amira's generation had used them out of desperation. Now it was time for the next generation to build something that didn't require such desperate measures. The chip melted, the codes were gone forever. 1 year later, a Dravani child visited a museum on her homeworld. The museum was new. Before the war, such a place could never have existed. The old government would have considered it heresy. But the reformers had insisted on preserving history, even uncomfortable history. The child stood before an ancient warship preserved behind glass. It was smaller than she had imagined. The paint was worn, showing patches of strange writing beneath. The plaque beside it read, "Built by humans of Earth, sailed by the Dravani. May those who come next build and sail together." She reached out and touched the glass, not with religious awe, but with curiosity. What had it been like to build such a thing? What kind of people created ships that lasted 300 years? Outside the museum, construction crews were working on a new project. Human engineers and Dravani laborers, side by side, building a communications relay that would connect their homeworlds. Someone made a joke in broken Dravani. Someone else laughed. Small things, tiny moments of connection in the vast darkness between stars. But that was how it always started. Small things adding up, seeds planted in burned soil, bridges built across impossible gaps. Trust earned one conversation at a time. The humans had never forgotten that they built those ships. For 3 centuries, they carried the memory like a weight. But in the end, it wasn't memory that saved them. It was the choice to build something new.